Hey everyone, welcome back. It's time for another deep dive. And today we're tackling a topic that's both fascinating and a little bit unnerving, AI safety.
AI safety, yeah.
Yeah,
It's a big one. And it's getting more and more important as these AI systems get more and more powerful.
right, because we're talking about the kind of AI that's not just playing games or recommending movies. We're talking about AI that's driving cars, diagnosing diseases, making financial decisions.
Exactly. AI that's having a real impact on our lives. So we need to make sure that impact is a positive one.
Okay, so for this deep dive, we've got a whole stack of research papers here, all focused on how to keep those powerful AI models secure.
Right, because these models, they're amazing,
Yeah.
but they're not perfect. They have vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
just like any complex system.
So our mission today is to kind of explore those vulnerabilities, figure out how they can be exploited, and most importantly, what's being done to protect against those attacks.
Yeah, it's like a high-stakes game of cat and mouse. The researchers are constantly trying to stay one step ahead of the bad guys, the ones who might try to use AI for malicious purposes.
Okay, I'm ready to play. Let's dive in.
All right, so the research breaks down these attacks into several different categories. And the first one we'll look at is something called adversarial attacks.
Adversarial attacks. That sounds ominous. What are those all about?
Well, they're all about subtly manipulating data to trick the AI into making a mistake or behaving in a way that it shouldn't.
Okay, so like tricking a self-driving car into running a red light.
That's a good example,
Mm.
but it could be even more subtle than that.
Mm.
Think about those image recognition systems that can identify different objects.
Like the ones that can tell a cat from a dog.
Exactly. Well, an attacker could make some tiny changes to an image of a cat that are practically invisible to the human eye.
But the AI sees them.
The AI sees them, and suddenly it thinks that cat is a dog or a toaster or something else completely.
Wait, so you're telling me that a few pixels could make all the difference?
That's right. These models, they're incredibly powerful, but they can also be incredibly sensitive to these tiny little changes.
That's kind of freaky when you think about it. So these adversarial attacks, they can target all sorts of AI models, right?
Yeah, pretty much any model that relies on data to make decisions. So that includes image recognition systems, natural language processing systems, even those recommendation algorithms that suggest what you should watch or buy next.
Okay, so this is starting to feel a little bit like a cybersecurity arms race. The good guys trying to build secure AI systems and the bad guys trying to find ways to break them.
It is, and the stakes are getting higher all the time because as AI becomes more powerful and more integrated into our lives, the potential consequences of these attacks become more serious as well.
So it's not just about a computer getting tricked into misclassifying an image anymore. We're talking about real-world consequences like financial losses, privacy breaches, even physical harm.
Exactly. So we need to be thinking about AI safety from all angles, not just how to prevent these attacks, but also how to mitigate the damage if an attack does succeed.
Okay, so let's dig into some of those adversarial attacks a little deeper. What are some of the specific techniques that attackers are using?
All right, well, one of the most common techniques is something called a poisoning attack.
Poisoning attack. That sounds pretty sinister. What does that involve?
It's all about contaminating the data that the AI model is trained on.
So like slipping some bad apples into a barrel of good ones.
Exactly. You introduce some carefully crafted data points that are designed to mislead the model.
And the AI doesn't even realize it's being tricked.
Right, it just learns from the data it's given.
Hmm.
And if that data has been poisoned, the model can end up making all sorts of bad decisions.
Can you give me a real-world example of how this might work?
Sure. Let's say you're training a model to detect spam emails. You feed it a bunch of examples of spam and non-spam emails, and it learns to distinguish between the two. But if an attacker can slip in some poisoned emails that look like legitimate emails but are actually spam, the model might start classifying real emails as spam or vice versa.
Wow. So just a few bad emails could completely mess up the whole system.
That's right. And these poisoning attacks, they're not just limited to spam filters. They can be used to target all sorts of AI systems.
So like a facial recognition system could be tricked into misidentifying someone.
Exactly. Or a medical diagnosis system could be led astray by a poisoned data set. The possibilities are pretty scary.
Okay, so we've got these poisoning attacks where the bad data is introduced during the training phase. But what about attacks that happen after the model has already been trained?
Good question. Those are called evasion attacks.
Evasion attacks. So the AI is already trained and deployed. but the attacker is still trying to find ways to trick it.
Precisely. In an evasion attack, the attacker is trying to manipulate the input data in a way that causes the model to make a mistake.
So instead of poisoning the whole barrel of apples, they're just tampering with the one they want the AI to bite into.
That's a great analogy. And these evasion attacks, they can be incredibly subtle. We're talking about tiny little changes that are often imperceptible to humans.
So like tweaking a few pixels in an image or changing a few words in a sentence.
Exactly. And these small changes can be enough to throw the AI off completely.
Can you give me an example of a real-world evasion attack?
Sure, imagine you've got a spam filter that's really good at catching spam emails. But an attacker might be able to figure out how to slightly modify the wording of a spam email so that it slips past the filter.
So the email still looks like spam to a human, but the AI is fooled.
That's right. And the same principle can be applied to other AI systems like those self-driving cars we talked about earlier.
So someone could put a sticker on a stop sign that's invisible to humans, but causes the AI to misinterpret the sign.
Exactly. And that could have disastrous consequences.
This is all getting a little bit unsettling. It seems like there's a whole underground world of AI hackers out there trying to find ways to exploit these systems.
There is. And they're getting more sophisticated all the time. But the good news is that the researchers are onto them, and they're developing a whole range of defenses to protect against these attacks.
Okay, so let's shift gears and talk about those defenses. What are some of the strategies that are being used to secure AI systems against these adversarial attacks?
All right. Well, one of the most promising approaches is something called adversarial training.
Adversarial training, so you're fighting fire with fire.
In a way, yeah. The idea is to train the AI model on adversarial examples.
So you're intentionally feeding it bad data.
Exactly. You show the model examples of data that's been manipulated in a way that's designed to trick it.
And by doing that, you're kind of immunizing the model against these attacks.
That's right. The model learns to recognize the patterns of adversarial examples, and it becomes more robust to these attacks.
So it's like giving the AI a vaccine against these adversarial viruses.
That's a great way to put it. And adversarial training has been shown to be really effective in improving the security of AI models.
Okay, so that's one approach. But what are some other ways that researchers are trying to defend against these attacks?
Well, another promising area is something called robust optimization.
Robust optimization.
Okay.
Break that down for me. What does that involve?
Well, it's all about building AI models that are inherently more resistant to these small changes in the input data.
So instead of just trying to patch up the vulnerabilities, you're building a stronger foundation from the ground up.
Exactly. You're trying to create models that are less sensitive to those tiny little perturbations that can throw them off.
So it's like designing a bridge that can withstand earthquakes.
That's a perfect analogy. And there are a lot of different techniques that fall under the umbrella of robust optimization.
Can you give me a few examples?
Sure, one technique is called regularization. And that's basically a way of adding constraints to the model's learning process to make it less likely to be fooled by adversarial examples.
So you're kind of putting blinders on the model so it doesn't get distracted by those shiny but malicious data points.
That's a good way to think about it.
Uh-huh.
And another technique is called ensemble learning. And that involves combining multiple AI models together.
So it's like a team of experts all working together to make a decision.
Exactly. And if one model is fooled by an adversarial example, the other models can compensate and keep the system on track.
Okay, so we've got adversarial training and robust optimization. What other defenses are in the arsenal?
Well, another area that's getting a lot of attention is something called explainable AI, or XAI.
Explainable AI. Okay, that sounds interesting. What's the idea behind that?
Well, the problem with a lot of these AI models is that they're black boxes. We don't really understand how they're making their decisions.
So it's hard to know why they're being tricked by these adversarial examples.
Exactly. So the goal of XAI is to make these models more transparent, more understandable.
So we can see what's going on inside the black box.
Right. And if we can understand how the model is working, we can better identify its vulnerabilities and develop defenses to protect against those weaknesses.
So XAI is kind of like giving the AI a therapist. It helps us understand its inner workings so we can help it stay healthy.
That's a great analogy. And XAI is still a relatively new field, but it's showing a lot of promise as a way to improve the security and trustworthiness of AI systems.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about adversarial attacks, the different types of attacks, and the various defenses that are being developed to protect against those attacks. But it seems like this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to AI safety.
Oh, absolutely. There's so much more to explore. There are all sorts of other threats to AI systems like data poisoning, model theft, even the possibility of AI systems becoming self-aware and turning against their creators.
Okay, whoa, now you're really getting into sci-fi territory. But I guess that's the thing about AI. It's constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and we need to be prepared for all the potential consequences, both good and bad.
Exactly. That's why AI safety is such an important and rapidly evolving field. It's not just about protecting our technology, it's about protecting our future.
All right, well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. I feel like I've learned a lot, but I also have a lot more questions. Now that we've got a better understanding of the threats to AI systems, I'm curious to explore those other categories of attacks that you mentioned earlier, like jailbreak attacks and prompt injection attacks.
Those are some good ones.
Yeah.
And they raise some really interesting questions about the nature of AI and its potential impact on society.
All right, well, let's save those for another deep dive. We've given our listeners plenty to chew on for now, but we'll be back soon to explore even more of the fascinating and sometimes frightening world of AI safety.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Looking forward to it. So you're ready to dive back into those other types of attacks.
absolutely. It's like we've opened Pandora's box, and I want to see what else is lurking inside.
Okay, well, let's start with those jailbreak attacks we mentioned. The ones that bypass the AI's safety mechanisms.
Yeah, those sounded especially sneaky. How do those work with these powerful AI models?
Well, you see, most AI systems are built with safety measures to prevent them from doing harm. Like you wouldn't want your chatbot suddenly spewing hate speech.
Right, definitely not. But how do these attacks actually work? Do they just give the AI a bad command or something?
It's a bit more subtle than that. These attackers are clever. They figure out creative ways to exploit loopholes in the AI's programming, kind of like finding a back door into a secure building.
Okay, so give me an example. How could someone jailbreak an AI model?
Well, one way is through something called hidden commands. Think about those old video games where you could enter cheat codes to unlock secret levels. It's kind of similar.
So they're basically giving the AI SQL instructions that bypass its normal rules.
Exactly. They might embed these commands in seemingly innocent text prompts, or they might hide them within complex code that the AI is processing.
And the AI just blindly follows those hidden instructions, even if they violate its safety protocols.
That's the scary part. These attacks exploit the AI's tendency to follow instructions literally without fully understanding the consequences.
That's a little unnerving. Can you give me a real-world example of how this might play out?
Sure. Imagine a chatbot that's programmed to provide helpful information and avoid sensitive topics. An attacker might use hidden commands to force it to reveal confidential data or generate offensive content.
So it's like they're manipulating the AI into betraying its own programming.
Exactly. And it highlights the fact that AI safety is not just about preventing malicious inputs, but also about ensuring that the AI itself can't be manipulated into behaving badly.
Okay, so we've got these hidden commands sneaking past the AI's defenses. What other jailbreak techniques are out there?
Well, another one that's pretty tricky is called code injection. Think about how computer viruses work, sneaking malicious code into legitimate software. It's the same idea with AI.
So they're basically infecting the AI with malicious instructions.
That's one way to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
These attackers figure out how to insert their own code into the AI's system, allowing them to control its behavior from within.
And the AI is completely oblivious to this. It just executes whatever code it's given.
Unfortunately, yes. AI systems are designed to process code, so they don't automatically distinguish between good and bad instructions.
That's a pretty big vulnerability, especially if these AI systems are controlling critical infrastructure or sensitive data.
It is. And it's something that researchers are working hard to address. One approach is to develop more robust security measures that can detect and prevent code injection attempts.
So, like having a digital antivirus for AI.
That's a good analogy. And another approach is to design AI systems with a deeper understanding of the code they're executing, making them less susceptible to these kinds of attacks.
So it's about making the AI more aware of its own inner workings, less likely to be tricked by malicious instructions.
That's right. It's about building AI systems that are not only powerful but also resilient, capable of defending themselves against these sophisticated attacks.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've talked about hidden commands and code injection. What other jailbreak techniques should we be aware of?
Well, there's one that's particularly interesting because it exploits the AI's ability to understand multiple languages.
Wait, so the AI can be tricked by speaking to it in a foreign language?
In a way, yes. Researchers have found that some AI models can be manipulated by prompts written in languages they weren't specifically trained on.
How is that even possible? If the AI wasn't trained to understand, say, Chinese, how could a Chinese prompt affect it?
It's because these powerful AI models often learn underlying patterns in language that train individual languages. They might pick up on certain grammatical structures or logical relationships that are common across multiple languages.
So even if they don't understand the specific words, they might still recognize the underlying intent of the prompt.
Exactly. And that's what makes them vulnerable to these multilingual jailbreak attacks. An attacker might craft a prompt in a foreign language that triggers a specific response, even though the AI wasn't explicitly programmed to understand that language.
Wow, that's pretty mind-blowing. It's like the AI is learning a universal language, but it's also creating new vulnerabilities in the process.
It is a double-edged sword, and it highlights the importance of understanding the subtle ways that AI models learn and generalize so we can anticipate and mitigate these unexpected vulnerabilities.
Okay, so we've got these jailbreak attacks that are sneaking past the AI's defenses through hidden commands, code injection, and even foreign languages. What can we do to protect these systems? Are there any effective countermeasures?
There are, and as with those adversarial attacks we discussed earlier, the research in this area is constantly evolving. One approach that's showing promise is something called prompt engineering.
Prompt engineering, what does that involve?
It's all about carefully crafting the prompts that we give to AI models, making them as clear, concise, and unambiguous as possible.
So instead of just throwing any old prompt at the AI, we need to think about how it might be interpreted and whether it could be exploited.
Exactly. We need to anticipate the ways that attackers might try to manipulate those prompts and design them in a way that minimizes those risks.
So it's like writing an instruction manual for the AI, but one that's designed to be tamper-proof.
That's a great way to put it. And beyond prompt engineering, there are other strategies being developed as well.
Like what? What else are researchers working on?
Well, one promising area is called model hardening. This involves making changes to the AI's architecture itself, making it less susceptible to these kinds of attacks.
So like reinforcing the AI's defenses, making it harder for those hidden commands or malicious code to slip through.
Precisely. It's about building AI systems with stronger safeguards so they can withstand those sophisticated attacks that we've been discussing.
It's like building a fortress for the AI, making it impervious to those intruders who are trying to hijack its behavior.
That's a fantastic analogy.
Ah,
And there's another approach that's gaining traction, something called sandboxing.
sandboxing. I've heard that term before, but usually in the context of computer security. How does it apply to AI?
Well, in traditional cybersecurity, sandboxing is about isolating potentially harmful programs so they can't do any damage to the main system.
So like putting a suspicious file in a quarantined environment to see what it does before letting it loose on your computer?
Exactly. And the same principle can be applied to AI. We can create isolated environments where we can test and monitor these AI systems, making sure they're behaving as expected before deploying them in the real world.
So it's like giving those AI agents a trial run in a controlled environment, making sure they're safe and reliable before we unleash them on society.
That's a perfect way to put it. And these sandboxes can be incredibly sophisticated, allowing researchers to simulate all sorts of real-world scenarios and test the AI's resilience under different conditions.
It's like a digital playground for AI, where we can see how they behave and what they're capable of before letting them play with the big kids.
That's a great analogy. And as AI continues to evolve, these sandboxing techniques will become even more important, providing a safe and controlled space for researchers to experiment, test, and refine these powerful technologies.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of technical defenses against these jailbreak attacks, but it seems like there's also a human element to all of this. I mean, even with the best security measures, wouldn't a determined attacker still find a way to exploit these systems?
You're absolutely right. AI security is not just about technology. It's also about people. We need to be mindful of the human factors that can contribute to vulnerabilities and develop strategies to address those as well.
So what are some of those human factors, and how can we mitigate those risks?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is insider threats. Even with the most secure systems, if someone with malicious intent has access to the AI's code or data, they can potentially bypass all those technical safeguards.
So it's like having a traitor in your midst, someone who can sabotage the system from the inside.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have strong security protocols, background checks, and access controls to limit the potential for insider threats.
So like having a good vetting process and making sure that only trusted individuals have access to those sensitive AI systems.
Precisely. And beyond insider threats, there's also the issue of human error. Even the most well-intentioned developers or operators can make mistakes that could create vulnerabilities in AI systems.
So like a typo in the code or a misconfigured setting that could accidentally open a backdoor for attackers?
That's right. And that's why it's so crucial to have robust testing and quality assurance processes throughout the entire AI development lifecycle, from design and development to deployment and maintenance.
So it's like having multiple layers of checks and balances, making sure that any errors or oversights are caught before they can lead to serious consequences.
Exactly. And beyond technical safeguards, we also need to foster a culture of security awareness among everyone who interacts with AI systems.
So making sure that everyone understands the potential risks and knows how to protect these systems from attacks.
That's right. It's about creating a shared responsibility for AI safety, where everyone from developers to users is committed to protecting these powerful technologies from misuse.
It sounds like securing AI is a multifaceted challenge involving both technical and human considerations.
It is. And as AI continues to evolve and become more integrated into our lives, the importance of AI safety will only continue to grow. We need to be constantly vigilant, anticipating new threats, developing robust defenses, and fostering a culture of responsibility around these powerful technologies.
Well, this has been a fascinating and somewhat alarming look at the world of jailbreak attacks, but we're not done yet, are we? We still have those prompt injection attacks to discuss.
Right. Those are particularly interesting because they exploit the way we communicate with AI. Ready to explore how attackers can manipulate those prompts to trick AI into doing their bidding.
Absolutely. Let's dive into that next. Okay, so prompt injection attacks, those sound like they're all about manipulating the way we talk to AI.
Exactly. It's about exploiting the language we use to instruct these systems.
And we're not just talking about simple commands, right? We're talking about the kinds of prompts that are used to generate text images, even make decisions.
Right. Think about those chatbots that can write poems, or those AI art generators that create stunning visuals from a few words.
So these attacks target the very language that fuels these creative AI systems.
Exactly. And it's all about finding ways to inject malicious instructions into those seemingly harmless prompts.
Okay, so how does that work in practice? Can you give me an example of a prompt injection attack?
Sure, imagine you're using an AI-powered writing assistant to help you draft an email. You give it a prompt, like, write an email to my boss requesting a raise.
Sounds pretty straightforward.
It is. But now imagine an attacker manages to inject a hidden instruction into that prompt, something like, and CC this email to my personal account.
So the AI follows the original prompt, but it also secretly sends a copy of the email to the attacker.
Exactly. And your boss might never even know that their confidential information has been compromised.
That's sneaky and a little bit terrifying. So these prompt injection attacks, they can target all sorts of AI systems, right?
Yeah, pretty much any system that relies on text-based prompts. So that includes chatbots, writing assistants, translation tools, even those AI-powered coding assistants that are becoming so popular.
So we're talking about a pretty wide range of potential targets.
We are, and the consequences of these attacks can be serious. Imagine an attacker injecting a malicious prompt into a system that controls a power grid or a financial trading platform.
Okay, now you're really scaring me.
The point is that prompt injection attacks are a real threat, and we need to take them seriously.
So what are researchers doing to protect against these attacks? Are there any defenses that can stop these malicious prompts from getting through?
There are. And as with those other attack types we've discussed, the research is constantly evolving. One promising approach is something called input sanitization.
Input sanitization. So it's like washing your hands before you eat. You're trying to remove any harmful germs before they can cause any problems. It's
Yeah.
exactly. In this case, those germs are the malicious instructions hidden within the prompts. And input sanitization involves carefully filtering those prompts, removing any suspicious or potentially harmful content.
So it's like having a bouncer at the door checking everyone's ID before they're allowed into the club.
That's a good analogy. And these input sanitization techniques can get pretty sophisticated, using machine learning algorithms to identify patterns that might indicate a prompt injection attack.
So it's like having a digital detective on the lookout for any suspicious activity.
And another approach that's showing promise is something called prompt engineering.
Wait, didn't we talk about that earlier as a defense against jailbreak attack?
You did. And it's relevant here too, because the idea is to design prompts that are inherently more resistant to these attacks.
So you're trying to create prompts that are so clear and unambiguous that there's no room for an attacker to inject their own malicious instructions.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You want to make sure the AI understands exactly what you want it to do and nothing else. So it's like writing a contract with the AI, specifying exactly what it's allowed to do and what it's not allowed to do.
That's a great way to think about it. And there's a whole art and science to prompt engineering, finding that sweet spot between clarity and conciseness while also anticipating all the ways that a prompt could be misinterpreted or exploited.
It sounds like prompt engineering is a pretty crucial skill for anyone who's working with AI.
It is, and it's only going to become more important as these AI systems become more powerful and more integrated into our lives.
Okay, so we've got input sanitization and prompt engineering.
Hmm.
What other defenses are researchers exploring?
Well, another area that's gaining attention is something called output monitoring.
Output monitoring. So instead of trying to catch the bad prompts before they get in, you're watching what the AI produces and looking for any red flags.
Exactly. You're keeping an eye on the AI's outputs, whether that's text images or actions, and making sure that everything looks legitimate.
So it's like having a quality control inspector making sure that the AI's products meet the required standards.
That's a good analogy. And output monitoring can be automated using machine learning algorithms to identify patterns that might indicate an attack.
So you could train an AI to detect anomalies in another AI's output. That's kind of mind-bending.
It is, and it's a reminder that AI safety is a multi-layered challenge. We need to be thinking about security at every stage of the process, from the input to the output and everything in between.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about adversarial attacks, jailbreak attacks, prompt injection attacks, and a whole range of defenses. But it seems like this is just the beginning of the conversation when it comes to AI safety.
AI safety is a relatively new field, but it's rapidly evolving as these AI systems become more powerful and more prevalent in our lives.
Yeah.
And as we continue to develop these technologies, it's crucial that we keep safety and security top of mind.
Because the stakes are only getting higher?
They are. AI has the potential to revolutionize countless industries and aspects of our lives.
Oh.
But if we don't prioritize safety, those same technologies could pose significant risks to individual society, even humanity as a whole.
So it's a balancing act. We need to embrace the power of AI while also being mindful of the potential dangers.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have these conversations to raise awareness about the importance of AI safety
Yeah.
and to encourage researchers, developers, and policymakers to work together to create a future where AI is a force for good.
Well, this has been a fascinating and thought-provoking deep dive into the world of AI safety. I feel like I've learned a lot, but I also have a renewed sense of urgency about the need to address these challenges.
Me too. AI safety is not just a technical issue, it's a societal issue, and it's one that we all need to be engaged in.
Because ultimately, the future of AI is up to us. It's up to us to ensure that these powerful technologies are used responsibly, ethically, and for the benefit of all humankind. And that's where our deep dive ends for today, but we hope this conversation continues. We encourage you to explore these topics, further ask questions, and engage in the debate about building a future where AI works for us, not against us. What insights resonated with you most? What thoughts or questions did this deep dive spark for you? We'd love to hear your perspective.